You are watching News 9. I'm Krishna Kumar. We're bringing you the latest visuals straight from Tehran. A grand funeral being held at Tehran's Enqelab Square for a senior Iranian military commander killed in the US and Israeli airstrikes that marked the opening of the war on the 28th of February. These strikes, part of the broader offensive in the region, targeted top Iranian leadership and security figures in and around the capital, especially Tehran. State media and eyewitness footage have shown large crowds gathering in Enqelab Square, mourning those who have fallen and expressing grief amidst heightened tensions across the country. Authorities have announced arrangements for the public ceremony in the coming days, a significant moment reflecting national mourning in Iran amidst the spiraling conflict with the US and Israeli forces. For all those tuning into this broadcast, visuals on your screens from the Enqelab Square in Tehran, where a senior Iranian commander killed in the US-Israeli strikes is being honored by Iran. Grand funeral taking place at Tehran's Enqelab Square for a senior Iranian military commander. So clearly, this is the beginning of the mourning as far as Iran is concerned, even if it continues to retaliate and withstand the offensive from US and Israel. Bear in mind, US said the last 24 hours has been the heaviest and the most intense day of strikes since the military offensive began on the 28th of February. So even as those intense shelling continues, Iran uniting in national mourning. So those are the latest as far as Iran is concerned. We're putting the focus on all the developments in Iran at this hour. We've been telling you all about how the war in Iran is causing a massive LPG and fuel crisis here in India. But right now we're taking you back to Iran and getting you the latest visuals. A day of national mourning in Iran, in the Iranian capital of Tehran. Tehran's Enqelab Square flooded with Iranians who are mourning a senior Iranian military commander killed in the US and Israeli strikes that began on the 28th of February. Bear in mind, it began with the targeting of top Iranian leadership and security figures, especially in and around the capital. That's where it all began. And it was on day one itself, bear in mind, that Iran's former supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was assassinated, was killed on day one alongside many other top IRGC commanders, or the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps commanders. For now, we understand that this funeral, these visuals that are on your screens now, are for one of those Iranian commanders. We're yet to get confirmation on which commander exactly is being mourned at the stage, but a grand funeral being held. Full honors for the military commander who was killed with the strikes. Bear in mind, this national mourning right in Tehran's heart, in Tehran's Enqelab Square, is taking place even as US and Israeli strikes have intensified over Iran. It is intensifying over especially Tehran, the national capital as well. And in the midst of it all is where this flood of humanity is gathering together to mourn the loss of one of their senior military commanders, senior Iranian commanders, possibly part of the IRGC or the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, the elite security force of Iran.
به دشمنان علی و اولاد علی میخواید لعن بفرستید، میخواید نفرین بفرستید، همونطوری که در زیارت عاشورا
a funeral ceremony at Enqelab Square that is uniting Iranians who are carrying flags and beating their chests in mourning as Iran gathers together to honor one of their slain commanders in a massive funeral that is taking place at the Enqelab Square in Tehran. A sea of humanity engulfing the Enqelab Square in Tehran in the midst of absolute chaos and pandemonium as Israeli and US airstrikes are intensifying across Iran, hitting their oil storage facilities, hitting their missile storage facilities, hitting their missile launchers. But bear in mind, it all began with the targeting of senior Iranian personnel, senior Iranian military personnel, senior Iranian administrative personnel. That's where it began. And now, in the aftermath of all of that, there is a serious mourning that is taking place, a deep felt mourning that is taking place. To talk more about it, I have our managing editor, Kartikeya Sharma, now joining us on the phone. And Kartikeya, looks, at least the visuals over here, overwhelming visuals of people coming together. This mourning looks like it is uniting the people of Iran in the midst of absolute chaos.
Absolutely, absolutely. Instead of creating a power vacuum, what Americans expected, that the people will rise against the Khamenei or the IRGC regime. People have actually come together against the Americans. The American attack, for the first time I can say, has had an opposite impact on Iran. People are together, and these are the visuals that have come in. And this is happening in the wake of the protests in which the Iranian regime killed more than 7,000 to 10,000 protesters. Then more than 50,000 were injured, thousands were put behind bars. But Khamenei, as per his own ideological spectrum, chose to die. He became a martyr. He chose his own death so that he could unite Iran behind him. And that's what happened. Not only Khamenei, but Mustafa Khamenei, his wife and his mother, the current supreme leader's mother and wife, they also passed away. So, in context of that sacrifice in front of people, you have this intense outpour of sympathy. And I think Americans must be thinking twice as to what they have done, because they thought the regime would collapse after taking out Khamenei, like Venezuela. It would become easier for them, They would be able to dictate terms, the tap of the oil, the flow of the oil. But instead of that, what Iran did? Asymmetric warfare. They choked the Strait of Hormuz. The tankers are on fire. American battleship carriers, 3 battleship carriers, I think all of them put together will be more than $200 to $300 billion. But they can't do anything because in this asymmetric warfare, they are flying $8,000 Shahed drones against a $13 billion aircraft carrier. And I'm not talking about the entire battle group. If I put one entire battle group, it's more than $100 billion. So, where you required a scalpel, they have deployed a hammer, and hammer is completely useless against what is required in the Strait of Hormuz, which is 33 kilometer wide, but the ceilings are only 2 miles wide. So this intense outpouring of sympathy is not unprecedented. It's making of the Americans, Krishna. Americans have got it wrong. And what is happening in Iran is because of the American intervention. So instead of rising against the regime, people are now supporting the regime, Krishna.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with you, Kartikeya. There's already questions being raised on what exactly was the US's idea of starting this campaign. What is their end game that is still being questioned? They keep saying that, this is not an endless conflict. This is not an endless conflict. There is a definitive end. There is a definitive end, but they're not giving an exact date. But with every passing day, Kartikeya, this is going to rile up the Iranians more and more. This is one particular funeral that we're witnessing over here for a senior Iranian commander. There'll be many more. And every single one of these, I'm sure this is being conducted by the Iranian regime to ensure that it is the Iranians who stand behind Iran more than anybody else.
Absolutely. It's not only about the Iranians standing behind the Iranians. It's also because, as you said, that it unites them. This grief unites them. This outpouring, public display of grief unites a vast section of Iran. Iran is a very diverse society. It's not only made of Shia Muslims. There are Sunnis, Arabs, and in terms of ethnicities, you have Baluch, you have Azeris, you have Tajiks, you have Kurds. You have people from the Central Asian descent. So it's a pretty complex mosaic of people living together. And now with so many people out, I would definitely say that Americans really got Iran wrong. Americans got the Iranian strategy wrong. Iranian, the depth they could not fathom. They did not even fathom that they deploy this mosaic strategy of 31 IRGC commanders fighting a war against the United States of America. So I would say that I'm not surprised by this outpouring. I think Khamenei, who was a repressive and a regressive ruler, actually by killing him, they ended up uniting the entire Iran behind a very regressive ruler.
Yeah, Kartikeya, you're talking about the regressive ruler. I really want to talk on that point, particularly because Indians are wondering how are Iranians reacting to this entire thing. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei killed on day one of the strikes. Now Mojtaba Khamenei, his son, is a new supreme leader. Many women were seen celebrating on the streets of Iran when Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was killed. We saw those visuals, but now you have a new leader. We saw, people gathering together in support of Mojtaba Khamenei as well. The day he was made the new supreme leader. But what do you think? Is this mood is changing now with more and more people wanting to support this regime? Originally, there was so much of outpouring against the regime, but is that being converted now?
I don't know whether the mood is changing. I don't know whether the mood is changing for good. But definitely one thing I know, that the people in Iran are appalled by what the Americans have done. I'm not saying that they have discovered some love for IRGC or the Supreme Council, which has now become a dynastic in nature. But definitely they have united against the current dispensation, because, you unite against a foreign aggressor. Even if you're fighting amongst yourselves, you will definitely say that no third country has the right to bomb Iran. And they have bombed the civilian areas also. So the people are very, very angry. That's one. And secondly, I would say that, Iran has also shown the limits of the American power. Afghanistan showed the limits of American power. Vietnam showed the limits of American power. Iraq showed the limits of American power. And, Iran is showing the limits of American power. Venezuela is one, I would say, exception whereby the entire nation was taken by surprise. But this new method where you decapitate the leadership and you think that the nation would collapse, I don't think it's happening in Iran anymore, Krishna.
Managing Editor Kartikeya Sharma there, putting that into perspective, putting these visuals into perspective, overwhelming outpouring of grief in Iran.